Okay, so we are on Daf Tzadi Hey Amud Bet towards the bottom of the page of BAYT Ema. So so this parak we have diverged from our discussing the technical physical characteristics of an Eruv, and we are talking about about what you can carry and how you can carry it when you're in Rishit Tarabim. So we're talking about the case of tefillin and when you can and can't carry it and how you should carry it. And let's say you find tefillin on the side of the road, how you're supposed to carry it back into a Rishut Yachid so that way it doesn't get stolen or ruined. So now the question was how much tefillin, how do you wear the tefillin, how many pairs can you wear? Even though tefillin sometimes is, as we learned in Masechet Shabbos, is considered to be a clothing because you do wear it on your arm and on your head. But then the question is, what type of wearing is it, and are you allowed to wear multiple pairs? So
is it, Rabbi, because it's clothing or jewelry?
It would, for these purposes, it wouldn't make a difference whether it's clothing or jewelry. Assuming it's something that's worn, you would be fine wearing it.
Because I think we do refer to it as jewelry sometimes.
Right, we do. Right, we refer to it as keter, right, as tiferet, right. So we do refer to tefillin as a crown. So, but either way, it would still be a.
I hear that gives us the allowance.
Right. So again, so we wear it. So the question is, are you allowed to be wearing tefillin on Shabbos to begin with? Meaning, is there a purpose fulfilled by that or not? Because you're wearing, if it's a mitzvah, right? Then there's that again, even though not if you don't wear tefillin on Shabbos, but if in theory there is potentially a mitzvah of wearing tefillin that can be fulfilled on Shabbos, then that would have something to do with how many you're allowed to wear and how. So
would that deny the fact that we say Shabbos is an os? Isn't that why we don't wear it?
This discussion. We're getting to that.
Okay,
right?
Good.
So as in that's it, right? So even if you say Shabbos is an oath, that is the question is, does that fully remove the extent of the mitzvah, or just say that therefore you don't have to? There's a reason to, and therefore you wouldn't make a bracha. You're not necessarily full anything, but it doesn't mean that like it's not technically to some extent still there.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to figure out here. To what extent is or isn't it here? So v'bayt ema dechuli ama almost Shabbat zman tefillin. Maybe you can wear tefillin on Shabbos. V'halcha b'mitzvah tzricha kavana k'miflagi. Tanaka kama savar. Let's say it by kavana. V'gamliel savar lo by kavana. Right. So maybe the question is that on Shabbos you could wear tefillin, and therefore, if you were to have put it on and the question is, if you put it on without trying to fulfill the mitzvah, right? So then maybe you're not wearing tefillin now. Right, if you only put them because you're using it as a way to transport your tefillin, so maybe that's not considered to be, right? That might be a problem. So the question would be also, if you're wearing two pairs of tefillin, again, if you're just wearing it as clothing, and then you can wear it just like we have you would go to the airport and wear all the clothes you own. Here too, wear all the tefillin you can fit on your head. But if you're saying that it's to fulfill the mitzvah, so there may be a question of baltosif, if you wear too many pairs of tefillin, if you're trying to fulfill the mitzvah by wearing multiple pairs, right? So there's a whole bunch of questions here. So, right. So the other hand, so that would be the Chachamim is saying that you wouldn't need to that if you have kavanah for wearing it for multiple purposes, that's a problem. Therefore, you can't wear more than one pair of tefillin. Whereas Gamliel says you don't need kavanah for wearing tefillin. If you wear it, then that's fine. And therefore, you wouldn't end up violating the in order to end up violating the mitzvah the Avera Baltosif, you would need to have had in mind that I'm wearing two tefillin because God commanded me to wear two pairs of tefillin, which is not the case. Even though you may see nowadays people wearing two pairs of tefillin that are small, that's not because they think that there's an inyan of wearing two pairs of tefillin. That's because they're besupach if the between Rabbeinu Tam and Rashi, and whether or not that's mutter or not, whether or not the act of wearing both violates an issue of yuhara or not is a separate discussion in the poskim, which I will leave aside for now. But yeah, okay. The BAYT ema. Okay, now we're actually on our daf. So BAYT ema dechulei alma. Let's say lo by kavana. So rather, according to everybody, if you had that in order to fulfill the mitzvah, you don't need kavana. Everybody agrees that you don't need kavana in order to wear tefillin. If you're wearing tefillin, even if you're not fully focused on them, you wore tefillin, that's a mitzvah. But the question is violating Baal Tosef, right? At what point if you're wearing 200 pairs of tefillin, could you have violated Baal Tosef? To Tanakama Savar, Lavor Mishum Baal Tosef, Lo By Kavana. Gamliel Savar Avor Shumbal Tosif by Kavana. So the question is, in order to violate the, wearing multiple tefillin when you're not commanded to actual multiple pair of tefillin problem. So then it comes down to, do you need to have intent of I'm wearing multiple pairs of tefillin for different reasons? Or is it just that you are just wearing it? So according to the Chachamim, the Tanakama, all you need to do is, if you're wearing it, it's a problem. It doesn't matter the reason. Whereas Gamliel says, no, you need to actually have in mind that you're fulfilling, that there's 2 mitzvot of tefillin, that you wear 2 pairs, and that's the baltosa problem. BAYT ema, so there's another option. E disvir lan de Shabbat zman tefillin, dechule ama lo lavor by kavana, velo latzeit by kavana. Another option we could say is, here was the machloket, that we're arguing about whether or not, that if you say that you can wear tefillin on Shabbos, that everybody, that tefillin is a time, Shabbos is a time we fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin fully. So everybody agrees that you do not need kavana, nor nor you need intent to fulfill the mitzvah at all, and therefore you don't need to violate either baltosif, or you don't need to either intend for baltosif or intend to violate or to tend to wear the tefillin in order for there to be an issue. The question here is whether we're in violation of wearing tefillin at a time you're not supposed to wearing tefillin. Tanakama savar lo by kavana, Rabbi Gamliel savar shlo bizmano by kavana. So the question is, if you're wearing tefillin at a time you're not supposed to wear tefillin, like the question we had about the mitzvah of oath. So is that an issue here or not? And that's the question: is there a problem of wearing tefillin when it's not telling you to wear tefillin? Are you in violation of something or not? So Tanakama would say that you need to have intent to violate in that circumstance, whereas Rabbi Gamliel would say that's not a problem. Again, like for instance, if you were to, let's say, sit in another case of baltos, it is if you sit in your sukkah on in the middle of the winter and you say I'm fulfilling this of sukkah, you have violated baltos. But if you happen to you happen to have built yourself a nice pergola, or and you just left it up and now it's middle of the winter, you're sitting there and you're just happen to be there, then that would not be a problem. Okay, so so now we're going back to try to explain within these opinion how this relates to 1 pair versus 2 pair. So So if this is the case, according to Meir, then you shouldn't even wear even 1 pair of tefillin because it's again not in its right time. So the ode. Right, so therefore, so we're saying we wear 1 or 2 pairs of tefillin, but if there's a problem of wearing it at the wrong time, then you can never wear your tefillin on Shabbos, even 1 pair, because if now's not the time, you're saying that all of a sudden you're saying we should wear tefillin 7 days a week, as opposed to 6 days a week, then that's a problem. So what to do? So and then even more then another question. Ode hayashen b'shmini b'sukkah yilaka. That even somebody who were to sleep on Shmini Atzeret or Shmini Atzeret in the Sukkah, we're talking about in Chutz La'aretz, or even in Eretz Yisrael, right? Again, this is the day, like the Suffix day. So it means that everybody who has the minhag of saying Kiddush in the Sukkah on Sukkot should be getting Malkot for being over on Baltosif, right? Because it's the 8th day now, and you're only told to do it for 7. Why are you doing the mitzvah for an 8th day? So Ela Mafvarta Kedushanina Meikar. Rather, the answer is that it can't be that if you were to be mosif in the zman for tefillah, that's going to be you malkot. That can't be an issue. If you extend the time period for a mitzvah, that's not going to get you malkot. It's not necessarily usher. So here you're right. So you're wearing if you're wearing the tefillin to save them here, so you're not in violation, even though whether or not you're not allowed to wear tefillin on Shabbos. So that's one question aside. So now we're gonna get back to our discussion about now we're back to the question of what time for the time for tefillin. Again, the primary discussion.
So, I don't know whether we have enough time to take a question, but it seems like it's different wearing tefillin on Shabbos than staying in the sukkah afterwards, because staying in the sukkah afterwards, all you're saying is you're not denying anything, as opposed to with Shabbos we're saying bris and Shabbos is all you need. And so you're denying one or the other by wearing tefillin, as opposed to sukkahs, where you're not really actually denying anything by staying in a sukkah.
So it's not necessarily that you're denying anything. It's that right. So it does look like that, but it's not you're denying the ode of Shabbos. Like it's Shabbos. You're still observing Shabbos. You're just simply you're wearing your tefillin now. So then, and also by the act of what you're doing, like it's pretty clear that you're wearing them to carry them because like that's what you're doing. You know, you're trying to
Okay. So
save
we're
yourself.
not saying you're not thinking it's not good enough that it's Shabbos. I feel like I still need to wear tefillin. Like
Right.
that's my
So
concern about what people might see
right.
or think.
So we're not concerned about Mart Ayin in this case. So for
Okay.
instance, also for let's say for Shmini Atzeret, why would people again we eat in the sukkah and there we're very clearly trying to fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah misafek. So right, so it's in there you'd say like even more clearly, like for tefillin, right? Again, you can always make the argument of, oh, I'm just wearing it. Who says I'm fulfilling it? But then for sukkah, right, it looks a little bit more like you're doing something deliberately. The defense for both of them, you can always say is that like it's entirely
I guess we're
possible.
distinguishing walking, wearing the tefillin as opposed to davening wearing tefillin. That would be more problematic.
Correct. Right, because then it looks like you're deliberately, if you deliberately put it on and have a Zman Kriya Shema, you're putting her and you're like davening while doing so. That might be more problematic, but the Gemara concludes that that's not really the issue here.
Okay.
Also, because it has to be very clear from the circumstances that you're trying to be for the shash of looks like Baltosif. So that it has to be very clear what you're doing is strange. So for instance, let's say in Toronto, and it's about 0 degrees outside, and it's Shmini Atzeret, like. The only reason why you're in your sukkah is because you think there's some degree of mitzvah, or you would never in your right mind be there. But if you're living in a warmer climate, let's say you're in Israel, and it's 20 degrees and sunny, and like it's beautiful out, and like why are you could always argue, why am I in my sukkah? Because like I'm enjoying being here. So it's so that's why again that line of reasoning is rejected because it doesn't seem to be that the Baltosif on Zmanim doesn't seem to be the issue unless you're intentionally doing it. And this for discussion on Sukkah, on the Shmini Atzeret, long discussion, but we'll have to discuss it another time. Hopefully I'll be able to finish as much as I can of the daf. If not, I will include what we don't in the recording. Not to worry.
Thank you.
Don't worry. So, okay. So now, how do Uman Shamat lay Shabbos man tefillin? So how do you know that Shabbos is the time for tefillin? Rabbi Kiva. So we learn it from Rabbi Kiva. So Tanya, we learn in Beit, Shamarta tuchka hazot l'moadah miyamim yamima, and you'll observe this law at its proper time, day to day. So yamim v'lo leilot, during the day and not at night. Miyamim v'lo kol yamim, prala shabbatot yom tovim divrei Rabbi Yossi Aglili. So, right. So again, this is the parsha of Kadesh Likol B'chor, which has parsha of tefillin in it. So again, Rabbi Yossi Aglili is stating that based on the phrase miyamim yamima is teaching us that tefillin is only mitzvah during the day, and that you can't. And but it also comes to include not only again one drasha is for the day, not night. The other one is for not on Shabbos and Yom Tov. That's Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Kiva Omer lo namar chukah zu elo inyan Pesach bilvad. So Rabbi Kiva says this is nothing to do with the Zman of Tefillin, even though that is in that chapter of the Torah. Rather, it's it's only referring to Korban Pesach and saying that you should be celebrating it, eternally. I do not hold to that drasha you just made. So therefore, we're trying to find another source for why you don't wear tefillin on Shabbos then. So Elahad did non Pesach Lamila Mitzvah say Lema Delok Rabbi Akiva. So then we say in regards to that Pesach and Mila are considered to be a mitzvah to say. So then maybe that's not according to Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Rabbi Akiva came into Muki La Pesach La Nami Ika. So according to Rabbi Akiva, then that would imply that it's not that the Korban Pesach is not just a mitzvah to say; it's also a mitzvah lo ta say. Kidarav Avin Amar Rabbi Elai, the Amar Avin Amar Rabbi Elai, Komakom Shanamar Hishamer Pen Al, no Ela Belota say. So whenever you said when you see the word Hishamer Pen Al, which comes up by Korban Pesach, so then therefore it must be that there is no you're forced to say that there's lotas out there. So here too, if you're using the drasha to prevent you from wearing tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov, that means that you're assuming there's a lotas say to go along with the essay for Korban Pesach. Now, afilu tema Rabbi Akiva, hishamer de lav lav, hishamer da say. Now, even Rabbi Akiva, he doesn't say that. When he's saying the word hishamer, if it's the word hishamer is in the context of a lav, that means that it's telling you, it's strengthening the fact that it's a mitzvah lo taseh. But if it says hishamer in the context of a mitzvah taseh, then it means that it's a mitzvah taseh. So it doesn't mean that there's a problem there. V'savar Rabbi Kiva Shabbat van tefillin. Does Rabbi Kiva really think that Shabbos is the time that we're to wear tefillin? V'hatanya, didn't we learn Beit? Rabbi Kiva Omer, Yachol yaniach adam tefillin b'Shabbatot v'yomim tovim. And Christ, Rabbi Kiva, is Shabbos really a time that you should be wearing tefillin? Do you want to write Rabbi Kiva Omer, Yachol yaniach adam tefillin b'Shabbatot v'yomim tovim tamulomar b'yal ot al yadcha. Mi shetzrich and ot yatsu ela shehein gufan ot. So again, this is Paul's suggestion earlier, right? So how can we do it? This is the drasha we've been concluding with, right? So Rabbi Kiva says, how do you know that he says that you can't wear tefillin? Again, so we had the drasha, we had one drasha earlier. So here's another drasha about why you can't wear tefillin on Shabbos. This is Rabbi Kiva's drasha that you thought you originally could wear it on Shabbos and Yom Tov, but the pasuk says vayela ot al yadcha. It will be a sign for you on your arm, an ot. So when you need a specific oath, meaning during the week when there's no other sign, because we don't have, then you would need one. But yeah, through Elush hang gufan oath. But since the Shabbos Yom Tov themselves are considered to be an oath, a sign, therefore you don't need to wear your tefillin on Shabbos or Yom Tov. So now we're getting to the question of putting on tefillin during the day, during the night. So, but that was the first statement we had earlier. Right, based on the drasha of Yemima. So Elahai Tana Detanya Haner Balayla Ratza Choletz Ratza Meniach Div Rebbe Natan. So now we're going back to that. So if you're awake at night and you want to take off your tefillin, you can take them off, or if you want to wear them, you may continue wearing them. That's Rebbe Natan's opinion. Yonatan Kitoni Amar Omer Ein Menichin Tefillin Balayla. Right. So Yonatan Kitoni says, you don't wear tefillin at night. Midalayla Tanakama is man tefillin. Shabbat nami is man tefillin. So from the Tanakama, Rabbi Natan, it sounds like there's since you could wear tefillin at night, seemingly you could also wear tefillin on Shabbos because he doesn't hold the entirety of the earlier drasha. So Dilma Sfir Le Lila's man tefillin who? Well, maybe no, this is not, because maybe that's not really a good proof, because maybe he holds that only at night is a time for tefillin. Shabbat la is man tefillin, but Shabbos is not a time where you wear tefillin. Deha shaminan leila Rabbi Akiva, Laila is man tefillin who Shabbat la is man tefillin who. Because even though yes, here he's definitely disagreeing with the opinion we had earlier of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, but Rabbi Akiva seemingly says that you can wear tefillin at night, but you can't. But tefillin during the day. Right, so you can hold of no tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov while still holding your tefillin at night. So, yeah. So he did. So there is an option to hold that way instead. So we do have so there is an option that'll work in the end, and we should. So for all those, so for anybody who's for question, wearing tefillin, during the if you put in your tefillin early in the morning, is that a problem or not? So that's based on our discussion over here of again, could you say the bracha if you put on your tefillin too early when it's still definitively night? Like if you put on your tefillin before alot hashachar or right, which for sure is night. So the question is, would you make a bracha or not? So this is to indicate that according to Rabbi Kiva, you would be able to make a bracha seemingly. Okay, as far as halacha l'maaseh goes. That's a separate discussion. I believe Rabbi Trishina wrote on that in the BAYT bulletin a couple weeks ago. If you would like more review of that, please let me know. Okay. Elahai Tana Hu Detanya. So now rather the question is based on the following brayta. Michal bat Kushi. Haita Manacha Tzilin. V'lo michu ba chachamim. So Michal bat Kushi, meaning this is Michal son of Shaul, right? Who's known as Kishi. Again, leave aside spellings for now. Okay. So right. So Michal bat Shaul used to wear tefillin, and the Chachamim didn't reprimand her. And similarly, the wife of Yonah, meaning the prophet Yonah. Who we learned his story on Mincha Yom Kippur. right? That's Haftarah. So his wife used to go up for Lila Regel, and the Chaim didn't protest. And remember that in terms of for both these things, they're typically viewed as being requirements on the man, not the woman, because of there being mitzvah sheish as man grama. Okay, so midalo michu b'chachamim alma kasavri mitzvah sheish shaloz man gramahi. So maybe the fact that the Chachamim didn't protest, they would imply that they think that it's a mitzvah to say that is not bound by time. Because otherwise, why would they be going? And why would they be wearing it? Just only if it's not a mitzvah, you're wearing it the wrong time. Or there's a question of now, if you were to wear your tefillin when at the time you're not supposed to be wearing tefillin, then you're in violation of something. So how could we be having Michal Bachol if women aren't commanded to wear tefillin, or Yona's wife going to make a little regel if they're not commanded in it? Isn't that baltos if they're not commanded in it? So the Dilma Savar law, Yosi to Amar Nashim Samchot Rishut. No, so maybe the answer is that that's wrong. What we just said. Rather, maybe this is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, who says that women are allowed to do are really the ones who have the obligation for korbanot and for other things, but these women still have the ability to do so if they would so wish, and that's why they again. So like when you make aliyah regel, normally you bring a korban. You bring a korban re'iyah. So here, even though he's saying the women could do smicha on their korban, means they could do it if they wanted to. So therefore, that means that women do have the option of going, and therefore that's not necessarily a problem. If you don't say it this way, so otherwise you'd have a hard time saying, how could you not say that Alila Regal is a mitzvah shesman grama? It literally has in its name 3 times of the year you're supposed to go. Like in mitzvah shesman grama godel mizu, it literally has every sign of being a time-bound mitzvah of it being. It tells you 3 times. So like, how do you ignore the time element there? So Ela Kasava Rashut Hachinami Rashut. No, it's not that women when we say mitzvah shesman grama that women aren't allowed, like have no part of it. It's just that it's considered to be a reshut. They're allowed to, just not mechuyab to, right? So if a woman were to make a regel, could she bring a korban and everything else? Did she fulfill mitzvah? Yes. Would we say that a woman is required to? Let's say if somebody's wife, like your husband's saying, like let's go to Israel to offer a korban pesach, a regel, not korban pesach. Let's say a different one because korban pesach is required. That's a different story. So we're talking. Let's say it's sukkos, right? And just the husband wants to go, the wife doesn't. So should the wife have to? The answer is the wife wants to go, she can, but she's not required to go. So that's a big difference. So Elahai Tanahi Tanya rather it's according to this Breita. So right. So now we're trying to figure out who says that you could wear tefillin even on Shabbos, because again, if tefillin is something that is always that is at all times, then it would not be as mitzvah shel hazman gramahi. So who's that opinion? Hamotzi tefillin machnesan zug. This is from the Beit that says if you if you're trying to move tefillin from Rishut Rabim back into Rishut Yachid, you do it 1 pair at a time. Echad ha'ish ve'echad ha'isha. Whether this be a man doing this or a woman doing this, echad chadasho ve'echad yashano tever meir. Whether this be a man or a woman, new tefillin or old tefillin, that's how you do it. Rabbi Yehuda oster b'chadashot u'matir b'yashano. And Rabbi Yehuda says you can't you do wear and take off the tefillin and bring them inside for new and unused tefillin, but only for ones that have already been used, because those are for sure till like kosher tefillin and not a kameya or simply empty boxes that haven't been filled yet. So right, so note that in that Breita, it explicitly says that women are putting on tefillin and for the purposes of moving them. So seemingly they're included too, like Michal Bat Shaul. And now we're trying. So the question is to what extent and in what context, and how did this affect the right? So that sounds like man and woman, and also for Shabbos can wear tefillin. You see there, we only argued about new versus old pair. Nobody argues about the women there, right? The women's putting on the tefillin too. So Shmamina mitzvah say shezlo zman gramahi v'chol mitzvah say she'ein zman grama nashim chayavot. So therefore, it implies that tefillin is not mitzvah sheish zman gramahi, and therefore, the woman should be chayav in it then. So v'dilma, so v'dilma savar la karbiyosi. Maybe we're still according to Yossi says that women's chiv. This is only the rishus really that. Not that women have to do smicha on animal, but they have to wear tefillin, but they could if they wanted to. It's a rishut. So lo tzakadatich, to lo Rabbi Meir savar Rabbi Yossi, v'lo Rabbi Yehuda savar Rabbi Yossi. So rather no, neither Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Yossi in that regard, nor does Rabbi Yehuda hold like Rabbi Yossi in that regard. It means that our part about tefillin has nothing to do with the rishut. The question about women wearing tefillin and wearing them in or out of rishut Torah bim on Shabbos is not connected to we're talking about. Can women do smicha? Can they lean? Can they put their hands on the korban and lean on it for the korban once to be made a leil regel? That's what we're talking about. So now we're going to explain why don't each of these people hold like Rabbi Yossi? Why does Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda hold like him? So lo Rabbi Meir savar lak Rabbi Yossi did not ein ma'akvin et tinokot milotkoa hanashim ma'akvin ustam anitin Rabbi Meir. So we prevent children from blowing. We don't stop children from blowing shofar on Rosh Hashanah, but if they're women, we would stop, and we wouldn't let them just blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, which means that shofar is mitzvah shezman gramahi, and therefore women are p'turot from it, and therefore it would sound like the women don't even have the option of fulfilling it at all, according to Rabbi Meir. Not just women have, like, so Rabbi Yossi would say women can fulfill it if they want, but they're not mechuyav. On the other hand, seemingly Rabbi Meir says women are not allowed to blow shofar. Below Rabbi Yehuda savar Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold Rabbi Yossi either. The Tanya, Daber al bnei Yisrael v'samach. The Beit says, the pasuk says, you speak to the bnei Yisrael and samach. Bnei Yisrael samchin ve'benot Yisrael samchin. Right. So the drasha based on the pasuk that only men do smicha, not women. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon omrim nashim zamchot reshut. But Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon argue with the Tanakhama and Rabbi Yehuda. Right, and how do we know that the Tanakhama and Rabbi Yehuda? Ostam sifra mani Rabbi Yehuda, because we say that again, sifra meaning the midrash halacha on Vayikra. So Ostam sifra is the opinion. If it's quoted straight, is simply it's simply Rabbi Yehuda. So we know Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold it either. Not to worry, we don't paskin I think we believe we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. So again, women are both again have a reshut of hearing tefillin. Both they have the reshut of wearing tefillin, that have a reshut of blowing shofar. So so that means that that's why women are allowed to say brachot, and also why the brachot on shofar, and it's full mitzvah when she hears shofar, and also in theory women can blow shofar potentially for herself and herself alone, but not for men. Again, in case we don't get to conclude this whole sugya, I just want to make sure I pointed that out, so nobody thinks we're getting the wrong idea. Okay, so Amar Rabbi Elazar, Hamotzi tchelet bashuk l'shanot stulot chutin ksherin. So if somebody okay, so somebody's going out and somebody takes out tchelet, meaning tchelet is wool dyed the color of tchelet. This guy over here, for more on what tchelet is historically, etc., please see the Appeal Tchelet website for more information, as well as where to get it. Okay. Anyways, so the question: so which things are considered to be fit for use and not fit for use? So l'shonot psulot. If you brought, this is the raw wool strips, so that's not kosher yet for tzitzis, and that's going to be like. And on the other hand, chutin ksherid. But if they're already, if you've seen a ball of wool, that's dyed blue, that's no good. But if you found your wool and it's already been spun into strings, you can assume that it's been done for tzitzis and you can use it. So now the question is going to be, Ma'ishna Lashonot to Amar Adata de Glima Tzivinu, Chutanami name Adata de Glima Tzivinu. So now the question is, so what do you mean? Why are we saying one way or the other way? Let's see if they have, do they have, let's just check if they have diagrams of diagrams here of the different types. Oh, we do. Good. Okay, 1 second. Let me share it so we can see what we mean by this different types of spinning of the wool, because it'll be right. Lashonot is, again, that's simply like, you know, raw wool. If you've seen it, great. If not, I'm not sure how to explain that to you. Okay, so again, it's like kind of like that. You can use, like, when you had just sheared it off the animal, you combed it out so it's straight, more or less straight. And then we have chutin, that's when you started to spin it, right, to twist it together into strings. And then shazurim is when it's so again, so let's say it again. So again, there's the first, again, the top one is lashonot on the left there, right? That's the raw wool. It's combed, but it's not yet spun. Then maybe when you find that, maybe when you dyed it, you wanted to have a nice blue garment. Who says you're planning on having it be your tzitzis? So similarly, you could say that if they're in string form, again, you normally go from string, right? You spun it into string, and then you use strings then to make clothing. That's typically the order of operations. So then maybe you'd also done that for the string. No, we say bishazurim, rather that it's already twisted, right? So again, so there's, you know, the difference between, you know, between this, let's say, string you use for sewing versus the way that our tzitzis currently are when when you twist them afterwards. The way that we currently twist our tzitzis is not the way you'd ever try and make the garment with. If you have any experience with knitting or sewing, you know this. If not, please find your nearest person who knows how to sew and ask them for help. Okay, so shazurim nami. So even if you say they're twisted, maybe there's another way reason why they'd be twisted in this manner. Nami nema data the sifta the glima I finhu. Maybe you made it because you didn't, why'd you twist it in that manner? Because you wanted to put it as a nice hem for your clothing. So no, what's the case? B'mufsakin is that they were cut into this to the length for tzitzis, right? So think about how long your tzitzis are. It's not enough to go around the edge of any beged. So nobody would have twisted it and made it into like looking like tzitzis in that manner and cut it short if you plan on using it for any other purpose. Like once it's in that shape and in that way, it is only being used for tzitzis. So Amarava, so once we mentioned that, so this whole long side point, we're like, what? So yeah, what was that? What were we getting at for putting that whole long discussion about how to make tchelet and which part is considered tchelet versus not, and how do you know whether or not what you're carrying is considered to be part of the tzitzis versus something else, and tie it on? So the answer is, so the question is, we mentioned before that if you have a new pair of tefillin, you're wondering maybe so maybe that too, like how do you know that the pair of tefillin is kosher if it doesn't look like it's been used yet? If it looks shiny, brand new, maybe something else. So Amarava, adam toreach lasot kameha kamin tefillin. It's a lot of effort to make it to make the bottom for the tefillin. If somebody's making a kameha, like, you know, a little amulet, like, are you really going to make it in such a complicated fashion, using such hard leather and, you know, stretching it out this exact way, making sure it's square and all the different, you know, rules you need for tefillin? Like, would you really do that just for kameha? So then we're trying to figure it out. So how does that work? Again, why is only if they're used do you know that? But if they're new ones, you say patur because it might be kumeya. Like, why would you think that? People don't do that. So Rabbi Zera alava bre. So Rabbi Zera told to his son, Puk tani lahu hamoti tchilat bashuk lashonot psulin chutin v'zakin ksherin l'fi she'en adam tareach. So Rabbi Zera said, go teach them this. And then see what they have to say. All right. So again, there's another version of what we had before. Again, they see. So again, he'd heard the discussion we had earlier about going out with the tefillin, and he said, well, how about the case we have here about taking the tchelet out into the shuk? So if you were to find tchelet lying around in the public marketplace, so again, if you find it in raw wool form or combed wool, that's no good, right? But if they're in strings and cut to size, then that means it's fine because if you find a tchelet string cut in that fashion, it only has one purpose to be used at this point, which is it must have been meant for somebody's tzitzis and it fell off, or again, or they just simply didn't tie it on yet. Therefore, it's kosher tzitzis. Kosher tzitzit string, sorry. So Amarava, Mishum de Tanila Hava Braid Rabbi Zera, Kefe Tlala. So right. So is that really enough of a reason? Well, based on that statement we had of Abba, son Rabbi Zera stated, is that enough to change the whole halacha that we had? The Hatanan we had in the Mishnah. Again, that's a nice bright that you're quoting, but we have a Mishnah stating that I understand his logic, but how do you explain the fact that the Mishnah says you can only wear you only save old tefillin but not new tefillin? So al amarava tarach lo tarach tanaihi. Rather, what must it be? The machloket between exertion of effort is machloket tanain. Okay, so then the Tanya learned in a Braita, hamosik tefillin machlitzin zugzug. So if you are finding tefillin in a shut rabim and you want to bring them into shut yachid to protect them, you take them in one pair at a time. Echad ish v'echad isha, albeit a man or a woman. Echad kadasha v'echad yashana. It's very mayor. Whether they be new or old, according to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda oser v'chadashot umatir v'yashanot. Rabbi Yehuda says it's asur whether it be new or old. Alma mar savar tarach inish, mar savar lo tarach inish. So we got a conclusion that some say that somebody would go through all this effort making a kameh that looks exactly like a pair of tefillin, or one would say that you would not. Okay, so we managed to finish the daf. So I'm going to quickly do a run through, and then afterwards, please ask your questions. I apologize. I went a little quick today. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I sincerely hope whatever happened this morning when I heard the screaming, I hope that they were all okay. Yeah. Okay. So again, so we were discussing the question of do tefillin need to clean or not. We were discussing the case of what exactly is tefillin and how that relates to, again, whether it be at night. There's a fly in Shabbos Yom Tov as well. The question of is there an issue about Tosef, the need for kavana for while wearing tefillin during the day versus during the night. Question of in order to violate Bal Tosef, do you need kavana? To fulfill tefillin, do you need kavana? And the combination thereof. We discussed the case of women's chiyuv and whether or not women doing things would end up being a problem of Bal Tosef if they're not mitzvah. And we discussed the various cases in regards to bring up to Korban Pesach. We discussed it in regards to tefillin, about Shaul and Yona's wife, about how it plays out, and then we ended up passing and Koran Rabbi Yossi that for women it is a reshut, even if it is mitzvah shittim grama, something they're not chayav. It's true they are not chayav, but they have the reshut in order to do so. And then we were discussing more in terms of, again, technical parts of talis. Of Zman of tefillin, night versus day, various limudim, the various reasons for why you can't work tefillin on Shabbos. And finally, we concluded at the end of the day that a lot of these things, question of can women wear or can't they wear, as well as can men wear when, and a lot of these things are machloket tanaim, and therefore, even the question of also, again, making tefillin as a kamea, or making, if you're finding a pair of tefillin as a kosher or not, comes down to the question of, are we worried about people making, at what point do we say, is there a limit on how many people will go in order to make something that's not actually for a mitzvah? So, and we included that there's that last part was machloket, where Rabbi Meir said nobody can go through all of that much effort, whether it be for tzitzis or be it for tefillin. Once it looks like tefillin, it's tefillin. If it looks like tzitzis, it's tzitzis. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, seem to say that you actually would go much farther in terms of just simply making other items, even if the comment looking almost like tzitzis or tefillin. Okay, so if anything that goes too quick, please ask your questions now.
Go ahead. Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Good Shabbos. Thank you.
Shabbos. Have a good Shabbos.
Rabbi,
Yes.
the article brings down about Michal and Yona's wife.
Yes.
It says that Michal put on tefillin because she was childless, and by putting on tefillin, there's a segula for having children.
Interesting.
Yeah, and also the Ben Yehuda says that for Yona's wife, she took the opportunity to do a Aliyas Regel because Yona at that point in time was hiding from Hashem, and she wanted to go to Yerushalayim to daven on his behalf.
Ah, good to know.
Yeah,
that gives you a reason for why they were doing it. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, good. Anyways, thank you. Shkoch. Have a good Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos.
Shabbos, Danny.